Hi, everybody. This is Michael Becker from the Mobile Ecosystem Forum. And with me today, we have a great cast to be able to talk to you about a really and terribly important and exciting concept. And this concept is, how do we leverage and use mobile operator data to be able to create a safe, secure, uninterrupted communications environment with our consumers and those that we serve. And if we think about it, really, we're entering into an area and time in society where the 3 C's really matter. We need to be able to connect with people. We then need to be able to communicate and have conversations with them. And then ultimately, we need to engage them in commerce. And that commerce is not just about transactions. How do we take money and exchange value with them? But it's really about how do we engage them along every step of the customer journey, everywhere from generalized awareness building to establishing and giving them opportunities to trial and experience us, to actually engaging in that transaction, and then ultimately helping them along with adoption, support, loyalty, and advocacy for our businesses. And that's really the whole point of today's conversation. So with me today, we've got 3 great speakers. We have Catalin Badia. He is with NetNumber, and they'll give their titles in a minute. And again, thank you to NetNumber for being the underwriters and supporters of today's webinar. So much appreciated. We have Alistair Fraser. He is with EE, and then Kevin Britt from British Telecom. So gentlemen, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
And then can you please introduce yourselves real quick?
Sure. So I can start. Hello, everyone. I'm Catalin Badea, VP of Product Management at NetNumber. Many of you might know NetNumber, but in case you don't, we're a phone number intelligence company. So we provide solutions that help our customers with routing of traffic, rating and billing, authentication, and fraud prevention.
All right, and we're going to get into what a phone number measuring company means in great detail in just a few minutes. And Alistair.
Alistair, work for EE. I'm working on the new product development side. And my job really is to work closely with businesses to see what their challenges are and to see if we could expose our customers' data in a secure manner and use that data to help businesses to meet the challenges that they're having, ever-changing challenges.
Perfect. And Kevin.
Hello, everyone. So Kevin Britt from BT. So I'm a product owner for wholesale messaging and also the product owner for messaging security. So looking at how to protect their network from smishing and kind of any potential data breaches using the HLR network.
Fantastic. All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to share our slides now. And then I want to just kind of really jump right into the overall conversation. So today we're talking about the role of mobile APIs and empowering secure global communications. Now, we've done our runner show with the speakers, so let's just jump right into the kind of stage setting slide for today's conversation. When we look out into this grand sea that we call the mobile ecosystem, what the team and I did is we pulled together this image just to kind of help you understand how the pieces come together. So it starts out with this mobile subscriber, and when we say mobile subscriber, we just don't mean the people, you, me, Kevin, Catalin, Alistair, et cetera. We actually mean things as well, our connected devices. Depending on who you're talking to, there'll be anywhere from 15 billion to 75 billion connected devices up into the market by 2025. And every one of those connected devices is in many contexts can be a mobile subscriber in itself and also making autonomous decisions. So there's about 11 billion mobile connections out there, 5.6 billion unique mobile subscriptions of people. And then there are these connected devices that are out there, playing alongside our lives. What happens is these people, these mobile subscribers, will connect directly to mobile carriers through their mobile devices, such as their phones, their watches, their tablets, et cetera, their IoT devices. They will also have direct relationships with businesses and organizations. And if we think about scope of world, when we're talking about these activities, there are over 333 million businesses worldwide. There are 1,250 mobile operators. I don't know if you all are kind of aware of those concepts. But there are a significant number of mobile operators, not just the 4 or 5 tier 1 operators that exist in any particular market. There are 80 operator groups, and there's already 4,600 networks around there worldwide. In the middle of the midst of those players is our government and our non-governmental organizations. For example, government, UK government, US government, but then we have non-governmental organizations like the Mobile Ecosystem Forum and players that help guide the industry and provide standards and activities. And then finally, at this bottom box, we have the mobile services ecosystem providers area. And there are just literally tons and tons, thousands of companies that are helping us create and have a secure mobile environment. And NetNumber being one of the leading players within this sea of companies. Now, the whole basis of today's conversation is this blue line right here. How do we make it possible for enterprises and businesses to be able to engage and interact and leverage, as Alistair was pointing out, these mobile subscriber data, the mobile subscribers, what many might call personal information, to be able to create a safe, secure mobile environment. And the benefits that by doing this is we actually help us serve mobile subscribers. We help reduce friction in the marketplace and the customer experience, for example, help enhance onboarding from literally in some context in days to minutes to instantaneously. We generate value from the mobile networks. We combat spam, fraud, and cybersecurity crimes. We support internal and regulatory compliance. We streamline operations, and we help private and public institutions succeed. That's really what this is all about. Now, Alistair, I want to go back to the first question or a statement that you had said in your introduction, where you said, we help expose people's personal data, and that's our goal with really with around today's webinar. And I want to assuage anybody's fears around that regard. So when you say we help kind of leverage and use subscriber or mobile personal data, what does that really mean? Are you turning around and packaging up a zip file and just handing that off to another organization? Or are you actually creating secure enclaves where you're creating business structure and environment where you can provide insights in a privacy preserving environment? Well, which is the right answer there?
Well, the latter is definitely the answer there. EE obviously have to be very, very careful as to what they do with their customer data. Whatever we do with our customers' data, we're doing it in the best interests, in the best interest of our customer. So, as an example, many of us will have heard on the news that fraudsters were taking over people's bank accounts, and they were taking over people's bank accounts in part by intercepting the one-time password via SMS that their banks were sending them. And so what the mobile network operators in the UK did is they shared what we call SIM swap information. So a bank can say, hey, EE, hey, Virgin Media O2, 3, Vodafone, because we're all working together on this collectively. And the bank can say, when was the last time Michael Becker's SIM was last swapped? And if it was last swapped 6 months ago, then there's no problem. The bank can let the transaction happen. But if we report back that Michael Becker's SIM was swapped 20 minutes ago, then that is a red flag. And that's something that the banks can look into a little bit more deeply. I mean, the banks have a legal obligation to look after their customers, and we're helping them to adhere to those legal obligations. And obviously we're sharing all this data in hashed format. We're sharing this data in a privacy preserving way, like we're sharing the minimum of information. And again, we're only sharing the information where it's in the interest of our customers to do so. And the legal basis, how our lawyers term it, is legitimate interest. It's
correct. And we'll come back to this when we talk about your APIs and more, but I really just wanted to get to that point. So before anybody starts, getting creative with their thoughts on this, and, when you're talking about we're sharing information, we're sharing data, we could have a whole day just on the concept of that. What is data? What is information? How do we work? Just to summarize in this aspect, businesses can exchange and connect with you through these APIs, which we'll define in just a minute, to allow you to exchange insights to be able to provide all these values we have on the screen. And that's really the key point. It's not like you're turning around and say, here's Becker's address. No,
absolutely
that's not what's happening. So now basically Kevin and Catalin, and then obviously Alistair, you can jump into this as well. It's safe to say that, we live in a connected world right now, and uninhibited inhibited communications for the 3 C's, connection, conversation, and commerce, is critically important. And protocols and protection layers are all absolutely necessary. And can you tell us more about the importance of striking this balance between empowering the mobile ecosystem, making this whole graphic work that you're seeing on the screen today, and restricting these malicious actors, keeping, essentially letting the good people, serve their customers and serve the society, and keeping the bad actors out. Can you talk about that a little bit more on the importance of doing that and the balance of making that happen? Let's start with Catalin.
Sure. Yeah, I think there are 2 things here. First of all, is the balance between user experience, the customer experience, and then the protection behind, because you can have a very complicated process that is the most secure in the world, and then it would be so complicated for the user to actually go through that process that nobody will use it, and they will just go around and find an easier alternative. An example here is that if you put a very complicated rule on the format of a password, people will just start writing those passwords on pieces of paper or whatever, which is definitely unsecure. The other aspect here is, and Alistair talked about this, is when subscriber data is shared and used, what's actually the format and the method to do that. And the way it's commonly done to preserve the privacy of the subscriber is not to provide the data in plain text. It's actually to match data against something. So you have maybe an onboarding use case. You have a company that wants to validate, does this phone number belong to John Doe? Is there an association between these? So you wouldn't query the number, get the name of the subscriber. You would just submit, I have the number, I have the name of the subscriber. Do they match, yes or no? And this is what the operators would return to you. That's a safe way to go about this from a privacy standpoint.
And let's like go the next layer into the ecosystem. So for example, if we move from this broader kind of high level ecosystem diagram and we dig into the mobile services ecosystem diagram, that's exactly where you fit. And so this ability, for instance, as Alistair was showing, they EE can interact with the enterprises and businesses, but they too are interacting with you to be able to provide that type of experience that you just said. Can you kind of share with us a little bit of really how does that work?
Yeah, so yeah, let's double click on the ecosystem diagram that you presented on the previous slide. So first of all, I'd like to speak about what phone number intelligence is, because we're going to hear the term a couple of times during today's presentation. So information metadata associated with the phone number. This is essentially what it is about. So do you know?
Let's pause right there real quick. This is really important. Information systems metadata about a phone number. Like, let's unpack that, right? So I have this idea called a phone number, 10 digits in the United States, a handful of more digits in other countries. And there, and so what is metadata? And can you give us some concrete examples of that before we move on? Because this is such a critical idea, concept.
Absolutely. So yeah, it starts with simple things like what is the operator that owns that phone number? Was the number ported? When was it ported? Is it a mobile number? Is it a landline number? Is it used for A2P messaging, or is it used for P2P messaging?
Pause right there. So A2P messaging, application to person, meaning
correct.
From a business.
Commercial messaging, business messaging.
Commercial messaging from like a bank to an individual.
Correct.
And a P2P from me to you.
That's correct. Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah. So no, these are some examples. So metadata that's associated with the phone number. Pieces of information that help, either with routing, either with fraud prevention. There are many use cases, but whenever a phone number is involved and you have certain, data points about that phone number, this is what, phone number intelligence is.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's look at how we connect the mobile operators with the businesses. So the middle line in your previous slide. So First of all, who are these businesses? Who's using phone number intelligence data? And I gave some examples here on the left. So, it can be enterprises, virtually any vertical. If they use phone numbers, then, they are a candidate for this type of services. Carriers themselves, mobile or landline, MVNOs, the CPaaS providers or, voice messaging hubs, digital identity services, fraud prevention services. I'm sure there are more, but just to kind of set the stage, who's using phone number data, phone number intelligence today, and they are typically interacting with the data through some sort of API. It can be a REST API, can be an Enum API, can be a SIP interface. Each of them has specific preferences there. And then what's the source of the phone number data? And I typically distinguish here between two types of data. One is data that pertains more to the phone number itself. So, what is the length of that phone number? Is it a valid format? Does it have a correct length and a correct prefix? Is the mobile landline, is a landline number? These kind of things, or was the number involved in any fraudulent activity? And then the other aspect to it is, it's still related to a phone number, but it's network data, mobile operator data. Like if you're looking at this phone number right now, is it on the EE network? Yes or no? Or if you're want to match, a phone number with a name, this is typically something that comes through a mobile operator API. So that's the high level. In terms of the granular detail, the type of data that we're using to help our customers with these use cases. So we have first of all what we call the Net Number Services Registry. So this is our own proprietary set of data that's used for messaging routing in North America. It also contains information about, what numbers are enabled for A2P messaging, because there is a certain process in place there to flag numbers that are used for A2P.
All right, and let me pause you right there. You're one of the leaders, if not the leader in the industry in this space. And so, we're not just seeing a sales pitch necessarily from NetNumber here, but explaining the various really important industry capabilities that are necessary to make this ecosystem work. So for example, this number registry is critically important. When phone numbers are born, they need to be registered, they need to be assigned to a network, and then someone needs to manage that phone number is associated with this network, is associated with this person, as that phone number routes around. Because what a lot of people may not know, when somebody initiates a call or when somebody sends a text message or a support call, that phone number may be assigned to a brand. That brand then may reassign that phone number to, say, their call center in India, and that call center may be calling in from yet a different network when it's initiating the call to support the consumer. And so all of those different players in the chain need to be able to have access to services like the Net Number Registry and similar ones that are out there to be able to track, is this phone number real? Are the people using it real? Do they have authority to use that number? And can we in fact securely make that connection? So that, that just piece alone is a whole other 1 hour webinar just talking about that one box on the top right.
Absolutely, yeah. There are a lot of processes involved there.
Okay, and so then we go through and demonstrate all the problems. I want to give Kevin an opportunity to chime in. Kevin, I see this down here in the bottom right, fraud prevention. So what are some of the threats to this network? If we come back up here and we look at this, what are some of the threats to the network that you or at BT are concerned about and trying to protect us both? And when I say us, I mean all of us. You. Yeah, so consumers, NetNumber, BT, everyone. Like, yeah. What are you protecting us from?
BT's biggest focus right now in messaging is smishing. Smishing is having a huge impact on our customer base, but not only that, it's having impacts on brands.
And can you define that real quick?
Well, smishing. Yeah, it's sending a phishing message via SMS.
Okay.
So, and how does this link into mobile identity? Is what we're tending to find is people are sending these messages to do account takeover. So when that account takeover has happened, it's then really important for enterprises, banks, even the network ourselves, to be able to identify that this person's phone has been swapped over to a different handset or a different SIM. So what we need to do as a wholesale part of BT is, first of all, try and remove smishing from the ecosystem. But also with mobile identity, we need to make sure that we give the correct wholesale tools to use mobile identity APIs correctly. So one of the biggest kind of things in the UK is we don't have a portability database. So the UK is purely on a HLR lookup, which is part of the SS.
Lot of important terminology here, and you know, and some of the business players like me maybe go, huh? You know, what is that, right? So the idea of portability database is, you know, I can move my, you know, I'm in the United States, so I can move my phone number from Verizon to AT&T, and there's a system to do that. You know, you don't have that in the UK. So, you know, you respect the idea of portability, but the mechanics, the way you do it in the UK are different than, say, in the United States.
Exactly this. So in layman's terms, all the networks are connected over an API, and the networks share information with each other to say if that number's been ported to a different network. And this is really critical, right, within mobile identity, because networks can only give information that sits on their CRM database. So for the likes of NetNumber, it's really important to be able to identify which API call to build. And this just builds in layers of complexity into an actual mobile identity message flow.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're saying is, as a wholesale provider, is we need to give secure tools to be able to do this. I think too many times mobile networks say, we've got this service, you can use it, but then don't give the tool to support it. And then that causes bad behaviors of people trying to use back doors into networks to find the information they need to then use the right API. So,
and just so we get the language correct too, when you say wholesale provider, you mean it's essentially meaning you're selling network access capabilities to other businesses, like a NetNumber, for instance.
Exactly this, right? Because banks need an intermediary between themselves and a network, because if you want to do an API, you need to be able to do APIs across all networks. So we need to, as BT Wholesale, provide that interface and have a partner network to provide other partners with that interface, and do it in a legitimate way. If we don't do it in a legitimate way, we encourage bad behavior, and that bad behavior normally means in pieces of data, normally mobile numbers, being shared inappropriately.
And let's pause there just so we can see these numbers. So the whole idea is making sure that this experience is, as we said earlier, secure, safe, fast, and so that we can actually achieve what the whole point and purpose of the network is. But let's put the nature of the numbers in place. 1,200 mobile operators, 33 million businesses. You know, you need to have these intermediary service providers simply for industry scale. There's no way every bank could have a direct contract with 1,200 operators. There's no way that every operator could be expected to have a direct relationship with 33 million businesses, let alone 5.6 billion people, right? So we need these people in these ecosystems to be able to create an environment that actually works. So often what will happen is a business will contract with a service provider that will then in turn give them the ability to have these APIs. So it's not like you know, all 333 million banks, businesses are directly connecting to the operator themselves. They're actually routing through you know, these partners to be able to make that connection. And so maybe we can work on improving the slide, but I think that's an important statement to note. And that's really how we support the complexity dialogue that you're discussing about right now. Yes?
Yes, correct.
Okay, perfect. All right, and so let's jump right in then. So we've talked about, we understand the ecosystem, we understand the importance of this, and you know, the implications of account takeovers are staggering. Like, I could have all the money drained out of my bank. I mean, it's like life-changing challenges that can happen to people when that occurs. So in the United Kingdom, and as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alistair, you and your brethren in the UK are really globally taking the lead. When I say brethren, I mean Vodafone, you know, EE, BT, O2, 3, to collaborate and come together to open up these APIs and to establish a standardized set of APIs that you all can use to be able to provide these types of protection and data insight services to the market. So can you've got 12 core APIs right now. You've already kind of referred to one, the SIM swap. Can you kind of quickly go through these and give us some ideas of what they really mean?
Yeah, sure thing. Well, if I talk first about the API on the very right, Number Verify, you mentioned earlier that the balance that has to be struck between security and friction, for example, right? Well, what we're trying to do is come up with products that can help both. So our Number Verify API can help with prove possession factors. So like here in the UK, Barclays Bank, for example, are quite open about the fact for some of their customer journeys, they don't want to send a one-time password via SMS to prove possession because they're all too aware that one of the biggest problems we've got is social engineering, where somebody phones up, they say they're from Barclays and they ask the customer to reveal their PIN code. People shouldn't do it, but it's done. And people are losing millions and millions of pounds this way. And so what Number Verify does is it just relies on the network in the background to actually prove possession. The bank knows Michael Becker's number. So the bank just says, hey, EE, can you see Michael Becker's number in this mobile app session or mobile web session? And because if you're browsing around on your phone, you have to be browsing around in our gateway, then we just say yes or no.
Okay, so let's pause right there. So I'm standing in London, I've got my phone, I'm on my bank's app, and behind the scenes silently, the bank says, okay, I know this is I know this phone number is associated with this app session. I'm going to silently ping through the API my network partners, share the phone number and says, is this phone number actually really associated with the name Michael Becker? And then you'll come back and say yes or no. Or something to the effect. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. You're standing in London, you're in your mobile banking app, and your bank will just say, hey, EE, here's Michael Becker's number. We know this is Michael Becker's number. It's been his number for years. Can you confirm or deny if this is the number that's currently in this session?
Oh yeah, okay. Currently in that session. It's nothing my name, Michael Becker, associated with the app.
Nothing to do with your name. Nothing to do with your name.
Very good.
You just pass us a number and say, is this the same number in this session? Yes or no? Because the alternative is sending a one-time password and having you come out of the session, look at like a 5 or 6 digit PIN, and then try and input it, and hopefully you'll get it right. Right.
Okay, and let me pause you right there. When you're using the term us, really strictly speaking, I'm a bank. I'm not connecting to you, EE, directly. I'm connecting through a network partner, an aggregation partner, a net number type company, exactly. Other layers there. Now they can come to you and you'll recommend or provide suggestions on who they might work with. But as a bank, I'm not directly, I can call you directly to get insight and intelligence, but I'm not contracting directly for EE for these services. I'm contracting with a service provider for these services. Correct?
Exactly. We've got partners that are connected up to all of our APIs, and they're connected up to all of the UK mobile network operators.
And on that note, that's the point earlier before, is that when we use these APIs, the bank can connect to one partner for one API for all networks in the UK.
That's right.
Okay, good. Right. All
right. So I just covered Number Verify. All the UK networks have Number Verify, right? And and again, the purpose behind here is you're removing the friction, you're improving the customer service, and you're making it more secure because it's not susceptible anymore to social engineering, right? So that's just one API. And then we've got network identity, which is kind of what Kevin was talking about earlier. This is an API that can just confirm or deny if this number belongs to the EE network. SIM change, we call it SIM change. SIM swap is what I referred to before. Giving a bank, for example, the date and the time as to when the SIM was last swapped for that phone number, because that could indicate an account takeover. Call divert, along the very similar vein. If I want to defraud you, I could get all your calls forwarded on to me. And therefore when a bank, for example, rings your number via an IVR system to disclose a password, I've intercepted it. So the call divert API will just say yes or no whether Michael Becker's phone number is being diverted or not. Account takeover, well, it contains SIM swap, which I've discussed. It contains call divert, which I've discussed. But the third attribute there will actually tell you whether your device has changed. So a bank might see that somebody has swapped their SIM, but have they swapped their device? What we're looking at is the pairing between a mobile phone number and the actual hardware, what we call your IMEI number. So a bank might find it very interesting that you swapped your SIM and you've swapped your device. So do you know what? One of the key messages I want to get across today is, we've got this selection of APIs, but just like the challenges businesses are seeing are always changing. What we're expecting is we're going to be continuously building and evolving these APIs. So what I'd like the listeners to be aware of is, what challenges have they got? Because chances are I've got no idea what those challenges are. And then they can reach out to us via partner or even direct, and we can work together to see whether we are sitting on data that can help them meet those challenges, right? That's I guess one of the most important messages that I'd like to sort of get across today. Some of these other APIs, again, EE is sitting on a lot of verified, and that's a key thing as well. Companies like Google have tons of data, but it's not verified data. EE has a lot of verified data, real-time data that companies can leverage to help themselves and help our mutual customers. Age eligibility, we've got companies there selling like vaping products online, and they could just say, hey, EE, is this mobile phone number bound to somebody who's 18 or above? Or 21 or above, or 65 or above. It doesn't matter. We're just looking into our CRM database and checking.
And again, there's a lot of nuances here. Unfortunately, we don't have time to do that today. But when you say this mobile phone number, meaning this mobile phone number associated with the account holder, the primary account holder, like if I bought a phone and I've given it to my kid, you're not going to be able to determine the age verification of a child in that context because the child's not the account holder. So there's nuanced detail there when you're thinking about these types of services that are important. And that's where Kevin comes in, because he'll say, Alistair, we can't do that. There's a security issue, or it's a compliance issue, or things like that. And then or Catalin will come in and say, look, here are the other related issues that we need to think in the market. So collectively, the industry is really taking a strong look at a lot of this. Yes.
Yeah, no, exactly. And when we're building this API, right, we're building it for a specific purpose. So if we're building this one, for example, age eligibility, we look in our database and we can see Michael Becker is the bill payer and Michael Becker's son is a secondary user. We know we've got verified data on the bill payer, but we do not have verified data on the secondary user. So when your son's mobile phone number is passed to us, we will fire back an error. But when your mobile phone number is passed to us, we'll fire back a response. Yes, Michael Becker is way over 18.
Yes, he is.
Yeah. Okay. So and then number recycle, again, haven't communicated, this is all about communication. We haven't communicated with this customer for many months. There's a potential that he left EE and his number was being recycled and given to somebody else. So the number recycle API is just, here's a mobile phone number. If this number was recycled, when was it last recycled, right? So if you see that it was recycled 7 months ago and you haven't spoken to them for 9 months, then you need to delete that number out of your database. So it just helps companies keep on track of their database and clean their database.
But just pause right there, though, to give a real concrete example of that. If I'm working with the bank and you're sending me bank updates, right? The last thing you want to do is be sending my financial information or my bank updates to somebody else that now has my old phone number.
Absolutely.
Right? That's an example of how you would use that. Is like, oh, he's no longer a cousin. That phone number is no longer as valid to him. So let's stop sending sensitive information to that number because we can't. We don't know who's on the other end.
Absolutely. So when Catalin talks about needing to be able to trust a phone number, this is exactly one of the attributes that will help you to be able to trust the phone number, because you'll be able to see, oh, this number hasn't been recycled for 18 months. I've been communicating with this number, 6 months ago. So we're absolutely fine. Go ahead.
And Catalin, can you jump in on that a little bit? Talk to us about really the mechanics of that and the importance of this.
Sure, absolutely. So maybe we can jump to the next slide, and then I can speak about.
Yeah, we'll come back to you, Kevin, in a minute. Let's jump to the next slide.
Yeah, so I can kind of speak through some use cases and how our services help with that. First of all, we have a service that is called NumeriCheck, and what it does essentially is phone number verification. Is this phone number that you're looking at, is it a valid, legitimate number, or is it an invalid or potentially fraudulent number? Simple but powerful. You get a score from 0 to 5. 0 is bad, 5 is good, and nuances in between. And that's a type of service that benefits a lot from many of the signals and the APIs that Alistair explained, because in the algorithm, in the logic that determines if a phone number is legitimate or not, you have to look at a lot of things. You have to look at simple things like, is the format of the number correct? Does it have an allocated phone number range? But then it's all that useful mobile operator data potentially, or other types of data that net number might have or might source from other places, like fraud prevention data. All these things, they play a role into determining if a number is valid or not. And it's powerful because it can help with a lot of telecom fraud use cases, from CLI and sender ID spoofing, CLI refiling. So whenever you have to check an originating number, is it legitimate or not? But then also to social networks, other web services. If someone is signing up with a phone number, you want to know, is that phone number a real phone number, or is it potentially an invalid number? Someone is just trying to automate a process to create fake accounts and then start spam from there. And even outside of telecom, Alistair gave the example of banks. If they use silent authentication, that's great, but for those that are still using OTP SMS, you want to check the number, the destination number, where that OTP is requested to be sent to, and to determine that phone number that was originally provided to you, the bank, in the beginning, has anything changed with the phone number in the meantime that makes it look like someone is trying to steal money from the victim's account.
And when you're saying OTP, you mean one-time passcodes?
Correct. Those 5 to 6 digit codes that you get from SMS. Correct. Yeah.
All right. So that's one example.
Yeah. So another example here, NumeriRisk. So this is about scam calls. You see a call on your network. You look at the caller ID. Is this you want to determine in real time? Is this likely to be a scam call? Yes or no? Again, different types of signals that flow into assessing this real-time scam likelihood, if you want, but also linking to what Alistair said. They're working on a scam signal API, and that's potentially something that can enhance our capabilities here and make it more powerful.
Let me pause you right there though and go to Kevin real quick. Kevin, when we say talk about customer here too, we're talking about the bank or the retailer, just so we can be clear about that. And so the bank or the retailer has a call coming in, it can ping the network. What's the likelihood that this phone is a scam? Now, again, we're talking about correlations and likelihood. We're not necessarily talking about definitives. And Alistair, please you chime in this as well. When the mobile ecosystem provides the insight back to the business, this call is likely a scam, or this call is potentially not Michael Becker. You're not telling the bank or the retailer what to do. You're just giving them insights to then be able to inform them how to make their decision. So for example, let's say I'm making a pay-as-you-go transaction, and the business, the retailer, immediately in milliseconds needs to determine whether or not they give me that small commercial product loan to be able to buy and walk out the door with the product. What's happening there? Is the bank just are they taking your suggestions, just immediately rejecting me and stopping all transactions, or is the experience, are they using that information to provide slightly different experience?
It's a good question. So when you speak to the banks, they're just trying to create traps constantly to identify fraudulent activity. So when you speak to them about mobile identity, it isn't the be all and end all of their portfolio of information. It's just helping them make intelligent decisions. So they'll piece that together with other portfolio information to actually make a decision whether to block or not. And I think like this is maybe some of the problems we've had previously in this area, is that messaging aggregators have actually been leading this relationship, but not really understood the fundamentals behind the security processes. That's why it needs third parties that are actually specializing in mobile identity to be able to hold stronger conversations and understand where mobile identity falls in within the ecosystem. Because I think there's a misunderstanding of the value of this data. I think messaging aggregators think it's much larger than what it actually is within a larger portfolio of information, something that NetNumber can provide rather than just these kind of singular information points.
And just to be clear, when we say mobile identity, it's not just this is a phone number, this is a phone number is connected to Michael Becker. It also goes back to what Catalin was talking about. Identity is the aggregation of single and or sets of attributes that roll up to make a presumption of identity. And it's that broad scope that we think about it. And Alistair, you and I were talking about a couple of weeks ago, it's not just the network's responsibility to provide these insights and give suggestions on this may or may not be this, but businesses also get a sensitivity with, for example, you were talking to me about, I think you said if an account's been opened up within the last few weeks and it does this type of behavior, then that means to us, a potentially fraudulent transaction is happening. So banks need to look, and businesses need to look at their own behavior of their customers to determine what is the behavior of a good customer versus a potential bad one. Can you comment on that?
Yeah. So I would say none of our APIs are silver bullets. Our APIs help companies to build a picture. It's just, one of many insights. One of our APIs was like a match API. So again, it's our stuff helps spot good actors as well as bad actors. So if you're onboarding thousands and thousands of customers, you'll be saying, what's your phone number? Because that's what I'm going to be communicating to you largely on. What's your name, your address, your date of birth? And what these companies can do is they can pass them to us and we'll check our database and we'll say, yes, bound to this phone number, there is a Michael Becker at this address and this date of birth. So they can let you then straight through. They don't need to ask you more and more questions, adding more friction time, and you experience more drop off. And so you have a better customer experience. So, and then once you've confirmed that, there's a Michael Becker at this address, this date of birth bound to this phone number, we will also say this is like a business number, or this is a pay-as-you-go number or a pay monthly number. And in terms of risk, they will more than likely say, pay-as-you-go is more risky than pay monthly, a contract customer. And then we've got a tenure API as well. So you can say, oh, right, well, this is good. Michael Becker is a contract customer. Well, actually, have you known EE? Have you known Michael Becker for more than a month or more than 6 months? And again, it just helps you build a picture. I mean, you were talking earlier about, do you let a transaction through? Well, actually, although we cannot share location data of our customers, of course, what we can do is we can confirm or deny whether you're on the EE network right away, right? So if a bank sees a transaction happening in France and you're in London, then what they can do is they can just say, hey, here's like Michael Becker's UK phone number. Is that phone number on the EE network? We're not confirming, we're not saying where you are. We're just saying yes or no, whether you're on the network, to help build a picture. If we say you're not on the network, well, that makes sense. A transaction's happening abroad. It makes sense he's not on the network. If we say, well, Michael Becker is on the EE network, and we know the EE network is only in the UK, whoa, then that maybe raises a red flag. Why is Michael Becker's phone on, yet a transaction's happening abroad, right? So again, we're just adding, helping people build pictures here.
Yep. And with that in mind, the security profiles of these pictures are critical. Kevin, you want to give us a couple more comments on that?
Yeah. So what we tend to find is a lot of the mobile identity requirements are either originating from SMS fraud, or once that's happened, SMS fraud's occurring. So what we've done as a network is taken a proactive stance to say that we need to do more. One of that is making sure that we protect all of our entry points into the network. So one of the large abuses that we can see is when people are sending fraudulent SMS via SIM farms. We can see third parties trying to attack our APIs to find out network portability information. So we need to make sure that we block that to make sure we only allow for legitimate use. But what we also find that's really important here is we can be proactive in our blocking, but we also as a network need to be taking responsibility for investigation as well. So like this is where we are scanning the dark web, we are scanning Telegram to identify individuals that are selling our customer data as part of a larger profile of a data breach that might have happened. We're also trying to identify the people sending these text messages. So our goal is yes, provide all these brilliant APIs that will allow you to identify what's happening to the consumer. But also as a network, we need to take a step back and say that we should prevent any account takeovers happening via SMS, which is such a powerful channel to acquire this data in the first place.
And again, just so we're clear, it's not just SMS, it's MMS, it's RCS, it's messaging over the network.
I think in the UK, SMS is most prevalent, right? So SMS and voice. One
Sure.
day maybe RCS will take up.
No, of course, but yeah, but just to focus on that. And at Catalan, there's been a lot of we's and us's and them's and all that. If I'm a business, and again, I can reach out to Kevin and Alistair and make relationships with them, but invariably businesses will tend to connect with somebody like you to then gain access to this broader network of we. So for example, if I'm the bank and Michael Becker's in Spain and he's pulling money out of the bank, the bank's not connecting EE, they're connecting somebody like network number who on behalf is checking in on all of the carrier networks. Is that correct? I just want to help people understand, who they would work with when they start implementing this.
You're right, and there are a couple of reasons for that. So one of them is technical in nature. Kevin explained that. So all these mobile operator APIs, they work on the network where they're offered. So you need to know in advance, does this number belong to EE or to one of the other operators in the UK? And then you have to call the API of the respective operator to get the data. So this, it's a two-step process, and this is something that obviously we can solve for. The other reasons is related to the fact that the APIs are usually not uniform. So each operator chooses their own way to implement essentially the same use case. They might be similar but not identical. So instead of connecting to 3-4 APIs that vary in format, then we simplify this in a single API across the entire a product essentially. And then also on the commercial side, one contract instead of several, one pricing model instead of several, because again the pricing models might have some similarities, but they're not identical between the different operators. So it's simply easier and faster to ramp up, and in some cases even essentially if you consider the fact that you need to know in advance where you have to invoke the API, which carrier that is.
Fantastic. And unfortunately, we're starting to kind of butt up in time. So let's move into kind of the wrap up stage of our discussion today. And can you tell me a little bit about, if I want to learn more about APIs, Alistair, maybe you can talk about your portal and the likes of your brethren carriers that have similar portals. Obviously there's the NetNumber blog. Where else could people go? Maybe Kevin, do you have some insights on where people can go to learn about these security issues? Let's start with Catalan. Where do people go to learn more about what we're talking about today and how to get started?
Sure. Well, you put the link up there. So yeah, our website, netnumber.com. We have there the documentation. And if you need more, we're happy to talk to you. So just reach out to us and we can discuss your use case in detail.
And again, just we talked about so much. Really, what I'm reaching out for is this idea of mobile number intelligence. This idea of how do I actually use a phone number to generate insight and intelligence into my business, so that I can, to be able to, establish safe and secure communications with those I serve. Correct?
Yep.
Perfect. And Alistair, you want to talk about your portal a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, people can go to developer.bt.com. Just filter on digital identity APIs to the left, and you'll see our digital identity APIs. you'll see documentation if you're a developer, but if you're more commercial, you can just see very simply under products, that you call our IMEI lookup API, you pass a mobile phone number to it, and you get an IMEI back, right? And again, that can tell you whether it's a burner phone or the latest phone, right, in terms of risk. And so, but if you don't see the API on there that you want, then you can either contact Net Number and discuss it, or you could come straight to me and tell me what the problem is, and maybe we can have a chat and see whether we could knock up an API that could help solve the problem.
Yeah, and again, let's talk about that, because it's really about data analytics and data science. And you're sitting, you and your partners at the networks are sitting on, an amazing amount of data, but you're not in, like, let's say I'm a bank or I'm a retailer. You're not in my shoes. You don't know. You don't have my commercial life experience. You don't know what I need. And the only way you'll know is if I raise my hand and tell you.
Absolutely.
This is what's going on in my environment. Can you help me? And you're desperate. No, I don't want to say desperate, but all of you really want that kind of endpoint experience to be able to make more APIs, make more uses of data. Correct?
Oh, that's absolutely right. I mean, the analysts, so the cybersecurity experts within the banks and the analysts within the mobile network operators got together over the last couple of years. And again, they've built an API. We're just about to launch it that can help to prevent social engineering, right? The authorized push payments. Authorized push payments is costing everybody millions and millions of pounds. Studies were done to prove that if the mobile network operators sent specific insights, that could help the banks to spot it. It was, the results were great, and now Vodafone, Virgin Media O2, and EE are putting all their time and effort into getting that API released. But
that's a great example. Industry coming to you saying, Houston, we've got a problem. In the collective Houston coming together and coming up with a solution.
Totally. And we keep talking about banks, probably because the return on investment is so obvious. But, even, all companies could use our APIs. It's not just banks. I mean,
enterprise, retailers, employers, all of it.
Absolutely. I mean, social engineering doesn't just hit banks. Social engineering hits BT. Social engineering hits the hospitality industry. Social engineering hits everybody.
Government.
So we keep talking about banks here, but actually, it's across the board. Companies could be using mobile network operator data.
Now, one day we'll have to have a conversation of can AI be socially engineered, but we'll come back to that later. And as we're wrapping up, Catalin, Alistair and Kevin representing UK operators, but this is a global problem. And UK is taking a global leadership role in terms of getting all of the core stakeholders, tier 1, tier 2 operators aligned and making this happen. What's the footprint for these kinds of capabilities around the world? Because Net Number has a global view there that most people may not be aware of.
Yeah, excellent question. So definitely it's not a global service yet, but it's increasing rapidly. If I'm not mistaken, the UK was the first market to actually have the mobile APIs implemented across all the operators. You see a lot of other countries that have followed suit. The list is growing, but you also see other countries where maybe 1 or 2 of the operators have implemented them, and then you're missing, a certain percentage of the mobile subscribers there. And then you also have a lot of countries where there is no such data. I would say the trend is positive, and this is what I'm really happy to see that in the beginning, maybe there were doubts on the operator side. This is something that, we should do, we can do. Are we going to get a return on investment? I think now it's just about, timing with pretty much all of them in terms of, everybody's planning them, but when is this going to be ready, if not already available?
And for those that are, it's not just about can we get a return on investment. Alistair and Kevin, you guys spend a lot of time. Are we legally allowed to do this? Do we have consumer consent to do this? So you're also looking at the GDPR and CCPA like regulatory requirements that look at the basis to which this type of data can be used. Can you guys comment on that?
Well, I mean, we're sharing data to enable companies to adhere to their legal requirements to protect customers.
Ah, that's a good point. So go ahead and explain that a little bit.
Yeah, so like, well, banks have a we have a duty of care to our customers. Banks have a duty of care to our customers. So things like when we're sharing SIM swap data, for example, that is sharing personal information. That's enabling the banks to potentially spot account takeover protection, which is, and they're doing that to comply with the rules and regulations that they need to comply with.
And
Right.
so they're,
We're helping
in
them.
some respects, they're almost legally required to put something in
Yes,
place.
they
use
are.
once they know it's available.
Yeah, exactly. And when Kevin's doing his job as well, and that's plugging illegitimate routes, companies were trying to protect their customers using illegitimate routes, and Kevin's doing his job by blocking illegitimate routes, and I'm doing my job by trying to create legitimate routes where we can still share the information that can protect our mutual customers.
Got it. Fantastic. And I got a question from, and I'm sorry, guys, we can keep this going for hours. I clearly love this, but we do have to wrap it up. And we have a couple questions. So one from our audience is, what's the roadmap? And you kind of already alluded to this a little bit, Alistair, but what's the roadmap for the API? So what's NetNumber doing? What's the EE doing? What's BT doing about building out the roadmap for the future of APIs in the UK and, and in fact, globally? Let's start with Alistair. What's your roadmap?
Well, at the moment, we've got an API called Scam Signals, which we're all the mobile network operators are hoping to have by the end of July. And that again is presenting banks with insights to help them spot authorized push payment fraud, detect it before it happens. Other than, but then, and again, we're now part of the open. I mean, again, we could spend another hour on this, but BT have now joined up with Vodafone and Telefonica at the, in the Open Gateway for the Open Gateway initiative, Kamara, where potentially we're looking at building loads of APIs and putting them out to the market, and those APIs also will involve APIs which require consent. So that will open up a lot of potential, where our customers are given the ability to give consent to share data, again, to make their lives easier, to help them with identity and all sorts.
And again, just so we're clear, because BT has multiple types of customers. So there's your enterprise customers, but then there's me, Michael Becker. When I'm a subscriber to BT, in theory, and this is not here yet, but in theory, I could enable my consent for example, for sharing elements of my attributes of my identity and elements of my personal behavior and information that could feed into advertising, that could feed into any number of different stages along the customer journey. And so now we're not just doing legal basis types of use of the data, we're actually doing managed informed consent basis uses of the data that then can open up just a whole treasure trove of use cases and value opportunities for everyone in the society.
Absolutely.
Very cool. Very cool. And Catalin, what's your kind of final remarks? Actually, I'm going to leave, since you're the sponsor, we'll leave you for last. Kevin, what's your final remarks? What do people need to think about, and what do they need to do next based on the conversation we've had today?
Yeah, me personally, you need to pick specialists in mobile identity APIs. People's that complete focus is in that area that will understand that the market shifts and trends and build their product appropriately. I think businesses that are multi-product faceted tend to be behind the curve in this area.
And in that regard, for example, the largest hack in the United States was in 2017, and it was because of a server misconfiguration. Right. So the specialists are going to be about making sure the software is coded right, the hardware is configured right, the network security is there. I mean, this is not a simple task.
Yeah, correct. And it's a huge juggernaut of a business if done properly. And the opportunities are endless for enterprises if they can pick the right provider to give them that data.
And expertise and guidance, yes.
Yeah.
And so, Catalin, with that in mind, as one of the right providers, if you will, what are the next steps? So, people listening to this today, what should they do tomorrow? What should they do the next day? What should they be building into their plans and the roadmap?
Yeah. What I would say is that, in this ecosystem, we're not missing data. There is a lot of data that is available out there. And while you have some industries and some types of customers that have adopted, phone number intelligence, they have improved their processes, they're saving money, they're avoiding fraud. You also have other industries and other customers who are maybe, not fully aware of what's possible. And, we would love to speak to those that have, the feeling that maybe the processes they have today are not optimal. They are overspending money on fraud related or non-fraud related things. Whenever phone numbers are involved, things can be, streamlined, and we would be happy to speak with them about what the possibilities are there.
Well, and on that note, thank you very much. This has been awesome. And presumably everyone can reach out to you and connect to you via LinkedIn. I'll write up a blog article about this webinar today. We'll make sure those LinkedIn references are in that article so people can follow up with that as well. But on that note, we're really grateful for your time today, everyone.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
All
you.
right. Take care.
Enjoy the rest of the day. Bye-bye.